Welcome to the First Things First podcast. And first things first, we need you to subscribe and leave comments letting us know what you think of the show. We're listening. I'm Nick Wright, joined by two of my favorite people, Jenna Wolf, Chris Carter. Now, let's get the show started.
Show. It's called First Things First. Alongside the Hall of Famer Chris Carter and Nick Wright, I am Jenna Wolf, and we are now just a day or two or three, most likely, away from big football games.
Yeah.
Pick a day. Any day.
Something like that.
Whatever.
Today's Thursday. The games are Sunday.
Why
People
should we
can do
focus
math
on
at home.
facts when we can focus on everything that goes into them?
Mm-hmm.
Yes.
Absolutely. Very exciting. We're going to have a Super Bowl matchup coming up. Got a little news out of the NBA and NFL last night. A lot going on.
We're actually 50 seconds closer to the kickoff.
Good math. Live, CC. Good job.
Better than what I went with, which was, I don't know, a day or two. It's arbitrary, the number. Let's start today with the Vikings and the Eagles. You know what they say. They say all that you need to be successful in the NFL is a franchise quarterback. Yet, of the 4 teams left in the NFL playoffs, which start in like 2 or 3 days, only one has a franchise quarterback, and that's New England, and that's Tom Brady. How do I know? Well, when I mentioned Foles, Keenum, and Bortles to my mom the other day, she said she didn't know that law firm. Foles, Keenum, and Bortles, Eagles, Vikings, and Jags may not have the marquee quarterback, but at least they recognize that.
I know this is what all you guys predicted back in the day was a Foles versus Keenum NFC Championship, so good job to all you guys that predicted that.
That's good. He's got a sense of humor. He's got that. All right, CC, let's start with that game. Which quarterback has to have a better game for their team to win? Keenum or Foles, Vikings, Eagles?
Well, I don't think people have given Philadelphia's defense enough credit going into this matchup. People have talked about typically the Vikings defense. Both of these quarterbacks can't afford to play poor and expect to advance to the Super Bowl. The quarterback that's got to play better, it's got to be Nick Foles. And the reason why is because the Eagles' defense, it's a good defense. Not as good as the Vikings' defense. Special teams-wise, you could argue, is it a wash? Who has the better kicker, the outdoor conditions? But Nick Foles, and more so his playmakers, they have to be able to help Nick out. And how do I help him out? Difficult catches, especially early in the game. Now, Philadelphia's field, Lincoln Financial, not the best footing in the world for wide receivers. So wide receivers will have the advantage over defensive backs because they are knowing where they're going. There's pieces of the field where there's not grass. There's pieces that are brown. So as you go through the game, the field will get worse. It's hard to grow grass.
In Philadelphia in December and January?
Yeah, so that will play a part in the game. So the wide receivers will have an advantage. I believe the Vikings will play more man-to-man. So I believe that the Eagles receivers will have an opportunity to be able to make some plays. And can they generate enough first downs and big plays? Plays over 20 yards. Alshon Jeffries, if they match Xavier Rhodes up against him, can he get a win in that type of matchup, which I don't think he can. So the pressure is on Nick Foles because I don't believe they're going to be able to run the ball. I believe the Vikings will be able to run the ball some, and the Vikings have shown through case because we have almost a whole season sample size compared to Nick Foles in 3 games, and Diggs and Adam Thielen seem to be on the same page with Case Keenum. So that's been more dependable. So I think there's more pressure, and Nick Foles, he's got to be the quarterback to play well in this game.
It's important to ask yourself, as both of these teams sit here at 14-3, how did they get here? The Vikings got here looking the same way they look right now. They got here with great defense, solid special teams, and a quarterback making enough plays. How did the Eagles get to 14-3? Spectacular quarterback play, with other things being complementary for it. Spectacular quarterback play in the biggest spots on third down, on third and long, in the red zone.
And being blitzed.
And while being blitzed, that's another great one. Those are 4 areas that Carson Wentz was arguably the single best quarterback in the entire NFL in those high leverage spots. So when we look at these two teams matched up, you say, okay, they had the same record throughout the year. They were, you could make an argument, either one was better, but they were the top 2 teams throughout the year in the NFC. What do the Vikings need to do? What they did to get to this point. They are prepared is the wrong word, but equipped perfectly to do that. What do the Eagles need to do? What they did to get to this point. That means they need great quarterback play. That means to beat another great team, they need great quarterback play. Can Nick Foles do it? That is a hell of a ask of him. But that's how they got here. They got here through that. The Vikings don't have to change anything. So the Vikings, the level of play they need from Case Keenum is the level of play they've been getting all year long. Had the Eagles been getting the level of play at quarterback they've got in the last month, they're not here. They're not 14-3. They're not the 1 seed. So to me, it's definitely Nick Foles because we've seen the Vikings become this team with just adequate quarterback play, or at times, in defense of your guy Case, pretty above average quarterback play.
Sure.
That's not how the Eagles got here.
Such a good point, and I think it's one that we haven't talked about. Is we always talk about what's the next game, not what took us to exactly where we are. And I think that's why you made a good point that this is going to come down to defenses. Because my question would be, could these two quarterbacks, both making their first ever conference game appearance, can they kind of negate each other? I mean, there's a lot of hype and there's a lot of excitement, and I'm sure there are a lot of nerves. Can you kind of negate the quarterbacks and bring this one down to who's going to show up and have the better defense then?
Well, you could see last week, Case Keenum, he was able to negate Drew Brees. You know, he didn't play as well in the second half, especially in the third quarter. But you could see that Drew Brees wasn't the dominant quarterback. He did lead him, but Case led him back twice. You know, so can Nick Foles be able to do something like that? Can this happen in the game? Typically, it doesn't happen like that. But because one of these quarterbacks is going to turn the ball over, either fumble the ball or throw an interception. Now, you might want to give credit to the defense, but we won't be talking about it as much as blaming the quarterback.
Right.
So the defensive play will be led by one of these quarterbacks making a mistake, which I believe that Nick Foles is more apt to do than our man Case Keenum.
It's also important to take note of that the Vikings didn't come out of nowhere, even though it feels like they did. This is Mike Zimmer's 4th year there. His 2nd year there, he had them 11-5 with young Teddy Bridgewater, just adequate play at quarterback based on defense and running. They should have won a playoff game that year. They had a chip shot field goal to move on to the second round. Who knows what they would have done? That was his 2nd year there. His 3rd year there, they lose their quarterback before the start of the season, still start out 5-0. That was just last season.
Yes.
The Vikings were 5-0 to start
made the big trade for Sam Bradford.
They start off, they look like the best team in football. They are then ravaged with injuries. And that 5-0 turns into 8-8. But that was a good football team last year. And then this year, they suffer their spate of injuries very early with the quarterback injury, Dalvin Cook's injury.
Right.
They're able to become who they want to be. The Vikings have been building towards this. How did the Eagles get here? It did feel out of nowhere. Yeah, they made great additions on the defensive line. Yeah, they added Ronald Darby. I understand those things. But the big thing was they got Carson Wentz, and he turned into a superstar. And now he's not there. So, that's why, to me, when we look at these quarterbacks, one guy has a lot more on.
And Carson Wentz led to Nelson Aguilar resurrecting his career after an awful season. Zach Ertz having his best season. So watch those two in this matchup, because you said they're led by great quarterback play, but it also was because guys making plays. So let's see if these guys can make plays with Nick Foles. Interesting matchup. Your guy, Terrence Newman, oldest defender in the NFL. He's the slot defender for the Vikings. He'll be going against Nelson Aguilar or Zach Ertz. So let's watch these three people in, because if Nick Foles has a good game, Nelson Aguilar and Zach Ertz have had something to do with it.
I am fairly certain that somewhere, anywhere, someone is still rewatching the Minneapolis Miracle as we speak. I'm also fairly certain that both Stephon Diggs and Adam Thielen are beyond elated about their current sporting lot in life right now. And I am positive that both have plenty of praise for the guy who threw that ball, Case Keenum.
Since day one, I had all the belief in him. I felt like he could get the job done. He prepared the right way. He does things the right way. So I had all the confidence in him.
He's had a lot of experience in this league, and he knows that you can't dwell on a play and you got to move on. And he's one of the best I've ever seen to just be able to have the same attitude, have the same preparation each week, and just be able to not really care what people think about him and just go out there and play football like he has since he was young.
All right, so let's break this down a little bit. Stephon Diggs and Adam Thielen, are how much of an advantage do these two give the Vikings? And you know the defense that they're going up against, but let's talk about these two.
Right. The exciting thing about not only their play is how did they get here? And they got a good friend of mine, former coach at Purdue, former coach at Ohio State, Darrell Hazel. He's their wide receiver coach. So in talking to him, how hard these guys work, how humble they are, how they can play any position in the offense, and how they have so much flexibility and interchangeability, so it allows the quarterbacks that, man, I don't have an X receiver. X receiver is the split end, typically to the short side of the field. Typically the flanker is the guy who can run faster. He plays to the tight end side of the field. Both of these guys, because of their size and their speed. Stephon's probably a little bit faster than Adam Thielen, but Adam is very underrated as far as his overall speed. They're route running. They're technicians. They're very good friends on the field. But the thing I think that separates these guys collectively apart is typically you only have one guy that plays off the ground very, very well. Now, the Vikings, they have two. Playing off the ground, what does that mean? Balls where you have to, that are contested, that are in the air. Adam Thielen and Stephon Diggs, I would argue they're the best two together in the league. With Diggs being on contested passes this year, he's number one in the NFL. So a lot of times as a backup quarterback, you don't like throwing the ball when guys are covered. But if you know a guy can elevate and go off the ground, it gives you a lot more comfort because he doesn't have to be that open. You can throw to a spot that he can go get the ball. So I think their overall ability, how both of them are hardworking, came from nowhere type. They're not supposed to be Pro Bowl players, and the way they've evolved together has helped out the relationship. There's no jealousy. There's no animosity. Both of them can score in the red zone. Both of them can go intermediate. Both of them are good after the catch. So when you watch them, man, they're very, very interchangeable.
What you described right there is so interesting. We spent so much time this year talking about the Cowboys and their receiving core and Dez in particular, and things that could make him a better player. The ability to play multiple positions, the ability to go in the slot, the ability to give Dak the confidence when you throw him the ball, he's going to go up there and get it. Meanwhile, a better team with less, and by the way, the ability to improve from where you were a few years ago, or at least maintain. We talked a ton about a guy not doing those things, not being able to do those things with all the physical gifts in the world. And then these two guys, who Diggs was a good prospect coming out of college, but he wasn't, it wasn't a top 10 pick, wasn't a guy that you looked at, no doubter. And Thielen was a nothing prospect coming out of college, with no disrespect to him. Those guys, their ability to improve every year, their ability to have success with three different quarterbacks, all with very different styles of play. They're not cookie-cutter quarterbacks, from Teddy to Bradford to Case. And what I think is the most important part, and it's one of the things that you taught me early on, because when you and I first got to know each other, I was mining you for Randy Moss stories, because that was just my youth watching football. You and Randy, it's one of my favorite.
Yeah, you were far more interested in him than me.
It's 100% accurate. It's totally true. But it's neither here nor there. So one of the things you said was, early on, one of the things you had to teach Randy was how to play your position. So, like, how to run your route. So, if one of you guys got dinged, maybe, but you didn't want the defense to know it, you guys could signal to each other, hey, you're going to be the primary. We're going to alternate. Different things you guys could do to make it harder for the defense to guard you. I'm not saying Thielen and Diggs are on that level, but the way that they can play every spot you want a wide receiver to play, and the way that they have given Case confidence to play better than he probably should be able to, because give us a chance. Just throw it up, give us a chance. We're at the very least going to make sure you don't get picked off, and we might come down with a spectacular play. I mean, it's been so awesome to watch.
And it's not only this season. Last season, Sam Bradford broke the completion record, right?
Percentage, yep.
Yeah, percent. Why? Because of Adam Thielen, because of Stephon Diggs, and also we can't forget, he's been banged up, but man, he is a Pro Bowl tight end in Kyle Rudolph, and don't forget their third wide receiver in Jarius Wright. Just when you start thinking about everyone else, Jarius Wright comes up with a big play for the Vikings.
But with these two, don't underestimate how important giving that quarterback confidence is, especially in a game on this stage where he's going to have to worry about 1,000 things. The one thing that he does feel comfortable in is he can put the ball up and he knows these two guys are going to go get it. And I think for Case Case Keenum, that's going to go a long way.
Yeah, they better be more concerned about me talking trash to him before the game.
Well, and Cece, just before we move off this real quick, I know one of the things, not to spoil or reveal you're having tomorrow, but I know one of the keys of the game that you think is going to be the Eagles' pass rush. Like, I know we're going to get into that later. The Eagles' ability to get to Case Keenum. Vikings still going to have to be able to throw the ball. One thing both of these guys have done a good job on, you talked about the contested catches, but also making the most of short throws and getting up the field. If the pass rush is a problem, they're not going to have a lot of 5- and 7-step drops.
Right.
It's going to be quick hitters, right?
Yes,
absolutely. And they need Stephon Diggs to be able to do what he's been doing, making a guy miss. They need Adam Thielen, a guy who they've been able to reliably throw the ball to on 3rd and medium, that he's going to be past the sticks and pick up the first down. Like, if the Eagles' pass rush is really good, that's a key part of this game.
And wide receivers, listen to Dennis Ryan, the equipment coach. Don't wear them fast shoes. Wear the big cleats, because that field, and Dennis Ryan knows best. Listen to him. Don't try to wear those little cleats where you're going to be slipping. A lot of the Falcons last week had trouble in Lincoln Financial Field.
I'm going to wear little cleats on Sunday just to make sure that I'm one with the Vikings. Welcome back to First Things First. Joining us now is Chris Canty.
What up, man?
Never a dull moment on the show. Not even
and sometimes
on
the commercial breaks are as exciting as these segments themselves. We will not get into that.
True story.
Let's talk about some football. There are 305,000 people who live in the city of Pittsburgh.
And all of them drink bone broth.
Oh, who brought that up? Certainly not I, said the fly. Of those 305,000, CC, Nick, and Chris Canty, I have no idea how many wanted Steelers head coach Mike Tomlin fired. Didn't matter, because the Steelers went in a different direction, letting go of the offensive coordinator, Todd Haley, instead. Haley had served in the role for the past 6 seasons, but had a friction-filled relationship with quarterback Ben Roethlisberger. Chris Canty, how much pressure is on Roethlisberger now that Haley is gone?
I don't know if there's too much pressure on Roethlisberger, because you're talking about a Super Bowl winning quarterback in, I guess, the twilight of his career. No matter how he performs over the next couple of seasons, it's not like the Pittsburgh Steelers organization is going to push Ben Roethlisberger out.
Right.
Now, that being said, I don't think it was Todd Haley's fault that this team struggled and didn't get past the Jacksonville Jaguars in the divisional round, because they were able to score points. It's just the defensive side of the ball couldn't stop the Jacksonville Jaguars offense from scoring points. So when you look at that, if you want to criticize anyone, you got to criticize Keith Butler, the defensive coordinator. He hasn't had any answers in terms of how his defense can be productive since they've been missing Ryan Shazier out of the lineup. That inside linebacker position is a sore spot for the Steelers right now. I don't know what they do this offseason, but they got to address it, whether it's free agency or the draft, because I don't think you can rely on Ryan Shazier coming back healthy next year.
And given this was the year of injuries. And that's all we talked about, was teams either not been able to replace with Aaron Rodgers, or teams that were able to find people like Case Keenum. So we shouldn't excuse, because that's part of the game. Ryan Shazier, they should have some type of answer for him on that defense, which would make Todd Haley the scapegoat for this, what was going on in Pittsburgh.
Is that what it was? Because you said we should have been talking about the defense. So why was Todd Haley fired then?
Well, because he didn't have a great relationship with Ben Roethlisberger. There's always been friction ever since he arrived there 6 years ago. And say what you will, Ben Roethlisberger was the guy that threw him under the bus when he talked about that 4th and 1, and he said, well, why didn't your quarterback sneak it? And Roethlisberger had no answer for the media, and he said, I like quarterback sneaks. I don't know why that wasn't a call. Like, that's directly a shot at Todd Haley. Okay. But if you look at the numbers, since Todd Haley got there, I mean, the first 2 years were a little rough because there was a little bit of a learning curve in installing his offense.
They're unbelievable.
But since then, yards ranked per game in the NFL. At his 3rd year, it was number 2 offense in yards, number 7 offense in points. His 4th year, number 3 offense in yards, number 4 offense in points. His 5th year, 7th in yards, 10th in points. And last year's 3rd in yards and 8th in points. Todd Haley is not the problem with the Pittsburgh Steelers offense.
Go ahead, Cece.
And last year it started, just some of it, just to paint a picture for the public. During the draft, they drafted Juju Smith-Schuster, USC, 2nd round, right?
Yep.
Immediately, he gets greeted to one of the great franchises by teammates tweeting that he's been drafted to replace one of the other wide receivers. So this is not Todd Haley's fault. So on draft day, a guy ended up having a remarkable year in Juju Schuster. He's been, by Martavis Bryant tweeting that, oh, then this guy's here to replace one of the other receivers. So there's been a lot of stuff going on in Pittsburgh for a long time. So Todd Haley has had to put up with it. He had to put up with L. Bell's holdout. He had to put up with the Facebook with Antonio Brown last year. He had to put up with Martavius being suspended for a long period of time. So for him to get this type of productivity with all these distractions, like, he has done a great job.
And he's had to put up with, just in the last 15 months, more than a half dozen instances of his quarterback going out of his way to either call out the head coach or the offensive coordinator. Speak for Yourself did a great job of outlining all this on the network the other day. I just want to go through it. So in the last 15 months, Ben Roethlisberger has said, our practices are too physical. We're an undisciplined team. We were outcoached in a playoff game. My coach told me to defer in overtime. That was this year against the Bears. Nobody even asked him about it. He just went out and said it. We should focus on Cincinnati, not New England. I wanted to spike the football. I wasn't allowed to. I wanted to sneak the football. I wasn't allowed to. That's Ben Roethlisberger going out of his way to call out either Todd Haley or Mike Tomlin. And they have to deal with it because he is a Super Bowl champion, because he is one of the 5 or 6 best quarterbacks in football. He never got along with Todd. It was a working relationship and nothing more. And he never, now Todd has had friction in a lot of relationships. He can be a tough guy to get along with, but one of the greatest receivers ever, Larry Fitzgerald, will say it's the best coach I've ever had. Some of the guys in Kansas City, Keyshawn Johnson liked him, not in Kansas City, but earlier.
Dallas.
With the Jets.
With the Jets. And so players can warm up to him. Roethlisberger never wanted to warm up to him. His contract was coming up, and Roethlisberger said, we want continuity, but didn't want the offensive coordinator back, which is why the quarterback's coach, Roethlisberger's guy, is going to become the offensive coordinator. So Big Ben has brought a lot of this onto himself and onto the franchise. So to answer the question, how much pressure is on Ben Roethlisberger? Hey, man, remember when Bill Parcells said, you want me to cook, but you got to let me shop for the groceries? Well, Big Ben, you want to pick the offensive coordinator, essentially. So, okay, you mentioned top 10 each of the last 4 years in yards and points. You better stay there.
Yeah, I don't believe Ben picked the offensive coordinator. It's easy to make that type of distinction because this goes back before Todd Haley. Who was offense coordinator before Todd Haley got there?
Bruce Arians.
Bruce Arians. How did that end? It ended the same way. So this is not new. And I'm just going to tell you, I know the Pittsburgh Steelers, and Ben's not going to be there enough that they would give Ben the ability. I believe that the quarterback coach is the most competent to be able to take over. So I wouldn't like to put that out there, that this is Ben's selection as far as the offensive coordinator. Because I know Mike Tomlin and Pittsburgh and their front office and how they've gotten coaches. They don't let the players have any type of input in that. So I believe they will get the right person. They've had the right person. They had Bruce Arians. He went on to Indianapolis and then on to a head coaching job in Arizona, but it came from what he created in Pittsburgh.
Well, CeCe, you mentioned they're not going to let the coaches pick the guys. Would you agree, though? I'm sorry. The players pick the coaches. My mistake. Would you agree, though, that if Roethlisberger had a better relationship with Haley, Haley would still be there? Because the production was clearly there.
Well, I just believe there's more things going on in that locker room than we know.
But isn't that
I don't like to draw conclusions that I can't prove.
Okay.
Todd Haley's responsibility to make sure the offense runs, that plays are called, that Ben Roethlisberger plays great. All the tweeting, the distractions, the Facebook, the talking about the contracts, that falls under Mike Tomlin's umbrella. That's not up for Todd Haley. Offensive coordinators aren't in charge of disciplining the locker room. I would say that's clearly under Mike Tomlin's scope of responsibility. That being said, this is a team that had, 13 wins? Ben Roethlisberger played great, including that last game. He had almost 500 yards or something. So shy of the relationship between Ben Roethlisberger and Todd Haley, what was the reasoning for them not renewing his contract?
Well, I can only point to the friction between Big Ben and Todd Haley. I can't point to anything else definitively. Now, you did have the distraction that Todd Haley got into an altercation at a bar in Pittsburgh a few weeks ago before the start of the playoffs, but I don't think that had any influence in terms of the decision that was made by the organization. Now, in terms of Big Ben having say on who the next offensive coordinator is, I don't think that he's handpicking the quarterback's coach to be the next OC, because realistically, if you're the Pittsburgh Steelers, how many years do you have of Ben Roethlisberger left? Mm-hmm. You're talking about 2 or 3 seasons before you got to think about trying to get somebody else in there to be your starting quarterback. So this is the twilight of his career. Right. Are you still trying to get a championship? Yeah, because you have Antonio Brown, one of the best wide receivers, if not the best wide receiver in the National Football League. You got Lev Bell, the best running back in the National Football League, one of the best offensive lines in place in the National Football League. You want to try to take advantage of that while you still have it. But ultimately, I'm not making decisions for the foreseeable future just based on what Ben Roethlisberger wants.
And a lot of times you overreact. People will say, yes, because they got stopped on a 4th and 1, a quarterback sneak would have been better. But pitching the ball to Le'Veon Bell on a tall sweep on 4th and 1 is not a worse option than Ben Roethlisberger going a quarterback sneak. He is a great football player. It was not blocked well. That's the reason why they didn't get it. And for them to be able just to say, oh, the question is, is he under more pressure? Man, Ben has been through some tremendous scandals in Pittsburgh, and they have supported him. Off the field, the scandal, as far as the sexual harassment, they supported him. Riding a motorcycle without a helmet, they supported him. And a number of other things, they have supported him. So as far as is there pressure on Ben Roethlisberger? No, Ben is a made man in Pittsburgh.
Tom Brady was limited in practice Wednesday. Chris Canty, it's every day. He injured his throwing hand after colliding with a teammate. So reports are that he might be slightly affected in the AFC Championship game, but that he should still be okay. So, CeCe, how much trouble are the Patriots in if Brady is not 100% against the Jaguars Sunday?
If Tom Brady doesn't play well, there's not a whole bunch of paths to victory for them to play. But I don't think this injury to his hand, I mean, if we examine every hand, I know Tom Brady's the quarterback, we examine every hand out there, we're going to have 60 hands that have bruises on them after the divisional round and now leading to the AFC Championship. Everyone's banged up. Everyone's got soreness. Everyone's got shoulders. Everyone's got ankles, knees, everything. I'm not concerned about Tom Brady as far as his hand being dinged. Quarterbacks have these type of injuries often. By Sunday, Tom Brady will be back to 100%. So I don't believe that his hand will affect his performance. And Tom Brady, I know Tom would want this. I'm not putting in an excuse for Tom Brady. Even if his hand is injured, I'm expecting him, and he's expecting to play at his best on Sunday afternoon.
Yeah, I'm not worried about Tom Brady's hand being dinged. I am worried about him getting dinged by that Jacksonville Jaguars defensive line. So that's the main concern that I have. And I don't think Bill Belichick or anybody on that Patriots team is worried about his hand being able to go on Sunday afternoon.
I do want to tell the audience, like, whatever happened, it necessitated an X-ray afterwards. It's something that they are obviously, that they were not planning. They were not anticipating. And you mentioned that everybody's dinged after the divisional round of the playoffs. What is true is you don't expect your quarterback to be more dinged on Wednesday than he was on Tuesday. It's why they don't let you touch him in practice, right? Like, I mean, I understand what you're saying, that Brady wouldn't want excuses, that this is not, he didn't break a bone. This isn't something that's a devastating injury for the Patriots, but it is noteworthy. They don't even let guys touch the quarterbacks at Wednesday practices throughout the week, correct? Like, I mean, the guy who did this, I'm sure, got in trouble for getting close enough to even touch Tom Brady at practice before an AFC Championship game. Like, that's noteworthy.
I guess. I mean, if y'all think so, like, I mean, if I guess, I mean, I've been in too many locker rooms. I've seen too many guys get hurt on a Thursday, a Wednesday, and they're okay. I'm not going to put any fuel on this, all right? Like, I don't see the reason to. Because I've seen so many guys. I had dislocated fingers on a Friday. Brad Johnson, before a big game, he's playing catch with a guy. I'm sitting there doing my tape, and I was done catching, and Brad throws me one, and I go to protect myself and dislocate my finger on a Friday before the game. Don't nobody want to care about it. Don't nobody care about it. I still went out there on Sunday and did what I had to do. This is par for the course. This is what we do, and this is what you should expect of football players, especially playing in January.
For what it's worth, I still care. I would have cared. I did care. I do care.
Right, and it's not as if I don't think injuries are significant, because when Tom Brady missed Wednesday practice during the season,
yeah,
I thought it was significant. This right here, I don't think it's significant, and I might have heard a thing or two coming out of that out of New England.
Could have literally saved 2 minutes if you said that before the other part.
We could have skipped to that part, right?
We could have skipped right to that part. Now we can move on to another storyline.
I tell y'all that all the time, and y'all still don't believe me.
It's your friend's sources,
I'm
Bob's
with you,
sources.
CC. I'm with you.
All right, let's talk about this game. Now, I'm not a betting girl.
He drank some of that Tom Brady juice, and it went away.
Okay.
Little TB12 action.
Avocado ice cream.
Chris Canty, you don't know this about me. I'm not exactly a betting girl. I mean, I'll win $20 at the slots and literally leave Las Vegas immediately. But New England is favored by more than a touchdown in this matchup. I might bet that. Tom Brady is playing in a conference title game for the 7th straight season and the 12th time overall. Jacksonville defensive end Calais Campbell acknowledged it'll be difficult to throw Brady off his game.
It's tough, I mean, you have to try to mix it up, but honestly, he's seen it all. He's played against this defense, a few times, so he's familiar with it. And so it's gonna be hard, but at the end of the day, we got to just keep trying to mix it up. And the biggest thing for us to be successful is we have to harass him, just make him uncomfortable. He's obviously he's the best player to ever play this game for a reason. But at the end of the day, we have a lot of guys who can make plays, and we have to just take advantage of opportunities.
Chris Canty, this Jaguars pass rush is no joke. What do the Patriots, what did Tom Brady have to do to tackle that?
Well, I think Bill Belichick is going to have to help Tom Brady with formation and scheme. When you look at the personnel of the Jacksonville Jaguars, they got two of the best corners in the league, Jalen Ramsey, All-Pro, A.J. Boye. Like, outside of the numbers, I don't know that you want to attack the Jacksonville Jaguars defense that way. So I think that a lot of throws are going to happen in between the numbers, crossing routes, option routes by those receivers. Take advantage of the matchups which you have with the linebackers and those nickelback. That's what you're going to have to do in terms of being able to move the football with your skill position players. Up front, I think a lot of that will be the formations, going with some wide looks, some inline tight ends, cut splits by the wide receivers, your tight end in a nasty split, being able to chip on those edge rushers. It's always easier to break down the pocket from the outside than it is on the interior because you typically have more space. So it's going to be imperative that Tom Brady gets help from Bill Belichick in terms of being able to take care of those edge rushers, Yannick Ngakoue and Dante Fowler. You're going to have a plan for those guys. But the one thing that you can't account for is interior pressure. There's only so much help that those three can get on the two guys inside. Yes. And so somebody's going to be left one-on-one. If you rewind back 2 years ago and look at that AFC Championship game in Mile High, Malik Jackson was the star of that game. That was the difference. Now, Wade Phillips did some things creatively on the defensive side of the ball. Everything was out of a split safety look, cover two, but you didn't know if it was cover two-man, if it was going to be man-free. He changed up the coverages and changed up the different rush points, but ultimately you had four amigos getting after the quarterback. And that guy on the interior, that three technique that's responsible for putting that quick pressure in the A-gaps on Tom Brady, that was the guy that gave the Patriots offense trouble. And so when you have that, not only from a pressure standpoint and being able to get Brady on the ground, but in terms of interrupting the passing lanes and getting your hands up, that's going to be one of the things that affects Tom Brady. If the Jacksonville Jaguars can do that, they're going to give themselves a chance in this game. And on the other side of the ball, if the Patriots can neutralize that and keep a clean pocket and allow Tom Brady to step up, they'll be able to have success.
You've talked a ton about that in these games, ideally, whether it's your pregame preparation, your game plan, whatever it is, you keep to the script of what got you there. That ideally, you don't have to do anything either as an individual, as a team, drastically different than what you've done to get to a conference championship game. That's what bodes the best for the Jags defensively. Only one team in the league rushed the passer more often this year with just 4 guys. The Jags were second in the league on percentage of plays run where they rushed 4 guys. The Jags, now, how successful were they? They ended the year second in the league in sacks. Yeah. So they were super successful. So they haven't been a team that's had to blitz throughout the season to get to the opposing quarterbacks. Now, they will, I'm sure, and I think it's something you're going to talk about, switch maybe some alignments up, switch some things up, maybe switch some different, have guys in different places than they typically would be in to throw a slightly different look at New England. But the Jags are not a team that has thrived on the blitz. We saw when Dick LeBeau was in Pittsburgh, the Steelers would have all this success throughout the season, didn't have a lot of success against Brady and the Pats. What's one of the reasons? The way they got pressure historically in that under Dick LeBeau, that zone blitz scheme, sending a bunch of guys. And we've talked about the stat. From 2007 to 2017, Tom Brady threw 90 touchdowns and 0 interceptions when facing 6 or more rushers. Like, he didn't throw a single pick against a heavy blitz. So the Jags don't rely on that. That does bode well for them, and I'm sure they'll change some things up going into this game so they see something slightly different.
Yeah, I think it's very important that the Jags, because New England will be prepared for their outside rush. And typically, you don't see a lot of people besides Von Miller a couple times, Cliff Averill when he was there in Seattle, being able to come all the way around the edge and also get back into the pocket, because Tom is not going to sit deep in the pocket. That's why I believe it's important to collapse the pocket. If I'm Jacksonville, I would try to get as many snaps as I can with my biggest and best defender, that's Calais Campbell, and I would put him on Shaq Mason, the right guard, or on the center. These are both undersized guys. They are really small. And if you're talking about a size mismatch, a strength mismatch, an ability mismatch, because only way they can help from being soft in the pocket is by bringing the back in the middle. And if they bring the back in the middle, it helps with your pass coverage. Now, typically, New England likes to chip the backs on the outside or release the backs through the line of scrimmage into their pass route where they typically have option routes. So if I'm Jacksonville, that's what I'm looking to do. I'm looking for Malik Jackson and Calais Campbell to wreck the interior of New England. If they are going to win, it's because that part of the game has happened.
And CC, another thing that the Jacksonville Jaguars can do is take a page out of what the Denver Broncos did to try to help their edge rushers out. They chopped up the front. What I mean by that is running ET games. Have the end be able to come inside on that tackle, because that tackle's out there on the island. Give the end a two-way go. Allow him to come inside to try to create quick pressure, and then allow those defensive tackles to wrap.
And they have to do this with a no huddle.
Yes.
They're not going to be able to rotate.
No.
Now, they have a good rotation in Jacksonville, but Tom Brady will go no huddle to make sure they don't rotate.
Why are we guessing? You're wearing a ring. You already beat Tom Brady. Just tell us. Tell us what the defense has to do.
Well, CC brought up a good point, and I think Tom Brady and Bill Belichick learned their lesson with going up against the New York Giants twice in the Super Bowl and failing to be able to beat them. We had 8 defensive linemen, so we were rolling 4 rushers every 3 or 4 plays, and that's exactly what you want to do, be able to maintain the freshness of your 4 pass rushers, because ultimately their success in terms of affecting Tom Brady and the timing of that passing game, a lot of what the Patriots do is timing. Right. Those option routes, those crossers. It's all timing, throws in between the numbers. And when the Giants
won those 2 Super Bowls and those upsets, the Patriots didn't go as much no huddle as they go now.
Exactly, and that's what I'm saying. They're not going to allow those defensive linemen to rotate.
Jags at Patriots. I'm no betting girl. I mean, I'll win $20 at the slots and literally leave Las Vegas immediately and be
happy. How much
we
betting on the game this week,
listen,
Jenna?
Sue's the same way as I am, so don't think this is the first you're hearing this. I got a good $8 to $10 on this game.
Okay.
But New England is favored by more than a touchdown in this matchup, so maybe I do jump in higher than $8. And Tom Brady is playing in a conference title game for the 7th straight season, also the 12th time overall. It's mind-boggling, actually. Regardless, Rob Gronkowski isn't looking past this tough Jacksonville defense.
They got many, many great players, and it's going to be a big challenge. It's the best team we're facing all year. They're coming up in the AFC Championship game this weekend, so we got to be ready. We got to be prepared, and it's going to be a big, tough challenge for sure.
Is Rob Gronkowski right, Nick? Is this Jaguars defense the toughest challenge they'll have faced all season?
The Jags defense, yes. If we drill it down to just what Gronk plays, the Pats offense versus the Jags defense.
But he didn't say defense, though. He said this is the best team.
Yeah, that part I don't agree with. I think the Steelers are a better team. I think that than they play. Go ahead. I know the Steelers lost to the Jags twice. I think the Steelers are a tougher team for the Pats. Also, the Pats this year played the NFC South, which is the toughest division in football.
I think
this
he was
year.
probably referring to the defense.
But Cece, what were you? I think it is the best defense because it's the best defense in football.
I think that Bill Belichick, the message that he sent was, because typically the players repeat what the coach says. Mm-hmm. And these are talking points that they give the players to be able to stay on. Rob Gronkowski did not come up with, Jacksonville's the best team we ever faced.
Okay.
Somebody told him that,
Okay.
and that's Bill Belichick. So there's a great deal of healthy respect for Jacksonville after they've watched 4 or 5 days of film, which I believe is something people should know.
Which is something, by the way, it seemed Pittsburgh was lacking. Even though Pittsburgh had got their teeth kicked in by Jacksonville earlier in the year, right? That it was something clear.
From the beginning. This game will start off where the Patriots will be more afraid to lose and more respect for Jacksonville than Pittsburgh, who got clobbered by them earlier in the season, and now they got 2 losses to go with that.
And so on Gronkowski in particular, he is the guy that I am most intrigued to watch in this game from a Patriots offensive perspective because, CeCe, you mentioned something earlier almost in passing that I think is really interesting, which is if the Jags do slide Calais Campbell inside and they collapse the pocket from the inside with Calais Campbell and Malik Jackson who had a ton of success against the Patriots in the playoffs a few years ago with Denver. Mm-hmm. That will force New England to use a running back in pass protection up the middle. Where did New England absolutely obliterate the Tennessee Titans, and where did they have their most success in the passing game throughout the season? Those annoying, frustrating little checkdowns, little dump-off passes, little split screens to running backs. Like, that has been such a huge part of their game, whether it's James White or Deion Lewis or Rex Burkhead when he was healthy, throwing to the running backs. If Chris is right that Jacksonville's going to try to eliminate that through a pass rush, force the running back inside, well, then we know the Patriots wide receivers haven't been great all year. We know that Brandon Cooks has been okay, but maybe not the dynamic game changer people thought he would be, and that Edelman's out. Amendola's just a guy. Like, Gronkowski is the X factor, to use a cliche, in this football game if the Jaguars attack them the way CeCe mentioned they might.
I just believe that in New England, this game sets up for the running backs to have big days. So you say who should Jacksonville be worried about? Who will New England concentrate? I believe that Gronk in a big game is always going to get 5 to 8 major targets in the game. So you always have to stop Gronk. But it's a matter of who is that other player or two, and that being Deion Lewis or James White. Both of them being healthy, I look for them to try to force feed them the football. And I believe that New England, they know that they can't potentially run on Jacksonville, but they might run on them just to slow down the rush. But also, Brandon Cooks was brought to New England for a game like today. And can he get open deep against man-to-man pressure? Tom Brady, for a long, long time, has wanted a deep threat. All right? And that's what Brandon Cook, that's his specialty. Now, you don't want to get in a short dink and dunk with Brandon Cook and Chris Hogan and Amendola against the corners of Jacksonville. If you're going to throw the ball to them, you need to throw the ball down the field. And I believe it's harder for New England to win if they don't get those big plays. Gronk's going to do what he normally does. But if Brandon Cook is not explosive, I believe it becomes very, very difficult for New England to fend off that great defense.
Isn't there something to be said for using the same game plan that got you here? And if those little dinks and dunks are what got you there, all of a sudden Brandon Cooks is going to turn it up and you're going to be able to go downfield and be successful that way?
Well, this is the thing. Brandon Cook is known for his speed. New England, what they do, they throw the ball short, but they throw it to everyone. I just believe that they're going to throw the ball to the running backs an awful lot. Now, New England, they are game plan specific. That means they are more apt to change what they're doing, but they still do either the same thing. When they throw the ball, they love play action and they love being able to throw the ball diagonal. All right? They don't have a vertical passing game. They have a horizontal passing game. And that's what Jacksonville's got to deal with. And when you have a horizontal passing game, you have to be able to tackle well and not get yards after the catch.
And I'm going to add something that's really drilled down on the strategy of this game. It's one of the cool things about when there's only 2 games in a weekend. You can really kind of get into the minute details you can't throughout the regular season. Our stats guy, Dusty, did a great job. This is something I never would have known. So the Jags are 80% of the time they rush exactly 4 guys. That's second most in the NFL. Why do they do it so often? The passer rating they allow when they rush just 4 is best in the NFL, a 64 rating. Now let's talk about the Patriots for a moment. Tom Brady, best in the NFL when being rushed by 4 guys. 112 rating. When he's rushed by 3, he's 25th in the league. When he's rushed by 5, he's 26th in the league. So, like, where he is at his best is where the Jags are at their best. A 4-man rush, right? So, in this spot, you're going to have a team that loves to attack the quarterback that way. A quarterback who throughout the season has had tremendous success when he is attacked that way. Now, granted, not against defenses as good as Jacksonville. That's something to watch throughout. If it is just a typical 4-man front, those guys rushing, 7 guys in coverage, that's something the Patriots have eaten up all year, but it's also what's gotten the Jags to this spot in the season. So it's just something to watch for this game.
Also, Tom Brady and this guy up here, Blake Bortles, which I've been staring at all season. Tom Brady played his first postseason game on January 19th, 2002. Blake Bortles was 9 years old.
He's got the experience edge, Jen. I would agree with you there.
Just a slight one.
Yes.
Cavs try and end a 3-week-long funk tonight when they host the Magic. Here is LeBron James admitting this has been a tough year for them.
It's been very challenging. Just from the simple fact of how many guys has been in and out. This is a difficult, year for our team. It seems like I say that every year, but this one has been even more challenging. With everybody that's been out and coming back in and the rotations and things of that nature has been very challenging on our team. But we have to figure it out. I mean, listen, at the end of the day, we have a game every other day or every 2 days, just like everybody else in the NBA. We have to go out and play.
Nick, LeBron James has played, am I right, every game so far this season?
Every game.
Are you worried at all that he's getting sort of worn down by all that, physically or mentally?
Physically, no. I mean, he doesn't seem to be playing any worse than he was at any point in the season. The only thing that's trailed off recently is his three-point shooting. He was shooting like 43% from 3 through the first 30-some games. That probably wasn't sustainable. He's in a bit of a cold streak from that, but I don't think his legs are tired. I just think he was shooting probably better than he actually can shoot for a long period of time. He said this is... What was the exact term he used? This is one of the most difficult years they've had. Last year was the strangest year he's ever been a part of. He said that almost a year ago today.
He likes hyperbole a little bit.
Well, 2 years ago, he talked about how he hadn't dealt with a coach firing during the season in a decade since Paul Silas was fired, I think, in his 3rd year in the league. And 3 years ago, he was so down on the team this time of the year. There was an amazing story that when they traded for Timothy Mozgov, it gave him a new life on the year because he saw how big Timothy Mozgov was. So LeBron, this time of year, does seem to, he's prone to hyperbole, and he does seem to maybe over-exaggerate what bad shape his team is in. But he is right that he's never had to deal with this type of bringing in new players, getting them acclimated, then they're gone. Like Derrick Rose, we're going to get him acclimated, then he's injured for a long stretch. Jay Crowder, we trade for him. We're going to put him in the starting lineup. He's never found his footing. Dwayne Wade, well, you're going to be a starter, you're not going to be a starter. And dealing with, for Wade, another all-time great, LeBron dealing with Wade as one of his best friends off the scenes, like, ego-wise, like, hey, you're now a bench player in this league, and that's not even to mention what he's having to deal with right now with Isaiah Thomas. So it doesn't surprise me that the leader of the team, the best player on the team, is talking about all the different stops and starts this Cavs team has had so far this year.
And with him looking forward to the season with this new collection of players, 8 new players on the team. So when you have 8 new players, you don't have that history or you haven't had success together. So even when you struggle, your struggles are different because you haven't had success together. And they can say whatever they want to. Cleveland, I know they have to move on, but they miss Kyrie. They miss another guy who can just take over a game, take over a quarter, and you can see that. You can see it because IT is not healthy, so then it becomes very evident. LeBron, as far as him being tired, I don't think he's tired from a physical standpoint, but mentally the burden, what he has to bear, he is a human, all right? And this has been a very odd year. When you're looking forward to the season with 8 new players and you're trying to get another championship and you start the season and miss all of training camp. So you mentioned everything, but LeBron missed all of training camp before all these other things started happening with Derrick Rose and D. Wade and now Kevin Love not playing as good as he was with IT coming back. So they have to acquiesce to him some more. LeBron can't afford to take no time off because he's trying to get used to his new teammates and after missing training camp. So it's been a very, very odd and strange year for the Cavs.
And I just want to expand real quick before you jump in, Jenna, on the Kyrie part of it. If you watched the Cavs in the last 3 years prior to this year, there would be stretches of time where LeBron was on the court where he was able to essentially rest. Because Kyrie was just, there would be 3-4 possessions in a row where the Cavs offense was, Kyrie, do something cool. Like, Kyrie's going to handle the ball the entire time off the court, play iso ball, and usually get to the basket or at least be able to get his shot off. Now, until Isaiah Thomas gets back to full strength, if Isaiah Thomas gets back to full strength, there's been no one on the Cavs that can do that. JR's having his worst season of his professional career. D. Wade and LeBron aren't playing a ton of minutes together because Wade's in the bench unit. So when LeBron's on the court, he's the only creator. He's got to do everything for the team offensively, which I think also leads to maybe, if not the physical strain, the mental strain of it because Kyrie's not there.
He spoke up and complained last year. Made a comment. He spoke up and complained the year before just about the state of affairs within the Cleveland organization. Is there an argument to be made that this works for this team? That somehow, some way, the drama and the fatigue and the playing time arguments and the personnel and all of it just works for these guys because they've been really successful the last few years.
What works, Jenna, is LeBron James is the best player in the world. And he's going to get his team to the finals either by hook or by crook. So you can either fire the coach, you can either go get a new player. LeBron has made it all work in the end. But now at this stage of his career, this potentially being his last year in Cleveland, we're not willing to accept that. We're not willing to accept Cleveland going to the finals and losing to Golden State, which I believe ultimately will be the tale of the season. And that's what's going to happen.
And I think while LeBron has amazingly been able to maintain his level of play, I don't think he's dropped off at all from this year to where he was even 3 or 4 years ago. Efficiency-wise, he might be having his best season. LeBron knows, just by the law of father time or law of averages, whatever you want to put it, his reign as the clear-cut best player in the world, we don't know how much longer that's going to last. And so right now, when it is still going on, to deal with all these different players, to deal with all the drama the team has had to deal with, and what he also knows is this, they are likely going to have new players or new player to bring into the fold here in the next month. The Cavs always add a key rotation player this time of year, so it's not ending anytime soon. And lastly, the stories that have come out the last week, an anonymous Cav saying LeBron's hunting assists. We know LeBron didn't say that. He's not talking about himself. And then the prominent players saying, we don't think we can win a title. LeBron knows he didn't say that. That, I think, also adds to how difficult the season has been, is he's got guys. It's not a 53-man locker room like football, right? It's 12 guys, and when you're talking about prominent players, it's one of 7 dudes, one of 7 or 8 guys, most of which he's very close with, who are talking either about him or about the team's chances, which is ultimately about him. And that adds to the strain. That adds to the drama surrounding this team.
Everything we've talked about this segment, everything. Nothing was shots aren't dropping. We're having a hard time with rotations. We just haven't talked about that at all. I've sort of just been listening to everything. What is the biggest issue facing the Cavs team? Why isn't it working for the Cavaliers right now? If you could point to one issue. Because it seems like it's more off the court than on the court, just from what
they're
I'm
not
hearing.
A very good defensive team.
So their defense.
Yes.
I mean, they're not very good. And you mentioned JR is having one of his worst seasons, if not his worst season ever. And you can't have that from one of your star frontline players.
Well, they've lost 9 of 12. During that stretch, they've been the single worst defensive team in the NBA. And you said shots not falling. Also during this stretch, their three-point percentage has dropped precipitously. Now, that's just, the ebbs and flows of the season. But this is a team that in the regular season, if they are not locked in defensively, which they have not been, if they're not hitting their threes, they shoot more threes than any team in the league but Houston. They shoot more threes than Golden State.
Yeah.
If they're not locked in defensively and their threes aren't falling, they are not a good basketball team, even with LeBron playing well. That's what they've been the better part of the last month.
The new movie 12 Strong, starring. Are you coughing? Wow,
I'm looking forward to it. You bring some tickets?
Chris Hemsworth and Rob Riggle. And look who's joining us now. One Rob Riggle, who I didn't realize you were actually an active member of the Marine Corps at one point.
I did 23 years in the Marine Corps.
So just a small stint. You just wanted to get a
little
taste
tour.
of it. Is that what drew you to this movie or to wanting to jump on board this project?
Yeah, I mean, obviously, but also the story is one of the most fascinating stories in military history. If you look into it, the book Horse Soldiers is what the movie's based on, but it was a classified story for a long time. Now it's been declassified, and finally, 17 years later, they're getting to tell their story. The interesting thing, I'll try to give you the Reader's Digest version. So when I went over, this story takes place in October of 2001. I went over and joined this unit in November of 2001. And I worked for Lieutenant Colonel Max Bowers, who I am now playing in the movie. So I'm playing my old boss in the movie.
Get out of here.
Yeah.
So if people people should see the movie, but just if people don't know the story,
Yeah.
I mean, the tagline is they watched in terror on September 11th, they volunteered to fight on September 12th. But since you experienced it firsthand and made the movie, can you just give us a little version of like what was actually going on here, what these guys were trained or asked to do in this circumstance?
Well, basically what happened is right after 9/11, we were looking to figure out one, who did it, and how we were going to respond to it. When we finally, we figured out obviously pretty quickly that it was Al Qaeda, and then that they were being harbored and protected by the Taliban in Afghanistan. So the Northern Alliance, who was already in Afghanistan and currently fighting the Taliban, their leader Mossad was assassinated on September 9th as payment to the Taliban. So the Al Qaeda assassinated this guy on September 9th to, as payback to the Taliban so they could stay in Afghanistan. And it really shook the Northern Alliance because he was the thing holding it together. Then they attacked us on the 11th, and then we responded. We went in, these 12 Special Forces soldiers went in, joined the Northern Alliance, and took the fight to the Taliban and Al Qaeda. They were the first ones in, first ones hooking and jabbing in October.
That's amazing.
Yeah.
Great story.
We're going to make a hard turn to football just because there's no
natural segue.
It's such an easy transition to go from one to the other. And we've been talking obviously about the championship games all week, and now we're getting ready. Let's start with the NFC. Two big-time quarterbacks going up against each other with tons of experience in this one, head-to-head. How do you see this battle between?
They're in the same class, weren't they? The class of whatever the.
Yes.
Yeah. So I mean, they came in the league at the same time. Is what
They
I'm
did.
saying.
So they have history.
So it's kind of cool. I mean, it worked out. It's amazing how things work out. You just never know how things are going to work out.
It's adorable. It's adorable. Case Keenum and Nick Foles. That sort of just falls off the tongue.
Sure.
Tell me about this little matchup between the two. What do you think?
Look, I think it's going to be awesome. I think Minnesota, they had such an unbelievable high. I hope they emotionally have calmed down and got their focus back. And because when you go through something like that, I think it takes a while to regroup a little bit, maybe mentally, emotionally, all that stuff. And don't underestimate the Eagles. Like look, everybody's complaining about Foles or whatever. The Falcons were red hot, in my opinion, red hot, and they shut them down. So that Eagles defense is real, and put it all together, I think we're going to have a great game.
You're a huge football fan. You've been involved with Fox for a long time, and the big show on Sunday. Where were you, and what was your reaction to the Minneapolis Miracle?
I was in my hotel room, and I was really bummed out that I was alone because I was screaming and yelling, and I couldn't believe what I was seeing. So I wanted someone there to acknowledge what had just happened. And
so you ordered room service, right?
Yeah, so I got the waiter.
Come here, go in, guys.
Right. But I did. I wanted to acknowledge it. So I did what everybody in this world does. I tweeted out "Oh my God, Vikings!" I think is what I tweeted, and that was it. But and then I called my son. He's back home, so I called him and I was like, "Did you see? Did you see?"
Yeah.
He didn't. So I felt bad because he was like, no, I was shooting hoops.
That story dropped off a little bit.
You mentioned the emotional high. So the one thing that's really interesting about this game, so CeCe he was at the game, he was able to be in the locker room right after. And CeCe's described that while in the locker room, celebration amidst, once Mike Zimmer acknowledges the team, acknowledges the moment, he started going down the schedule for Monday. Like, listen, practice squad guys, you show up at 7:30.
Yeah.
These guys, you show up at 8, just to try to refocus everyone.
Yeah, definitely refocus, level set. Everyone, do you guys realize we just witnessed a miracle? That's what he said. They said the Lord's Prayer, practice squad squares, 8 o'clock, weightlifting, 8:30, team meeting at 9.
Good.
So the chance of recovering.
I think that's the absolute right thing to do. I think that's the smartest thing you can do. You come off an emotional high like that, it is so hard to reset and regroup and refocus. And I think that's right. You have to acknowledge it. You can't blow it off. Celebrate it, acknowledge it, but then, you got to get your head screwed back on.
On the other side of the bracket, there's one team I think everyone expected to be there in the Pats. Then another team not a lot of people expected to be there in the Jags. I think everyone was looking forward to Pats Steelers too. The Jags threw that off in a style that I don't think anyone saw coming, winning the game 45-42. A lot of ways the Jags could win that game, allowing the Steelers.
The over-under was 42.
Right. Both teams hit the over by themselves, essentially. It was, right. It was so. What up, Steve?
He's not the person to remind what the over was. Okay? I'm just going to tell you.
I'm not yet over.
One of Kansas City's finest.
Yeah, the fact that I bet the under in a game where both teams individually hit the over. Wasn't my finest gambling moment in a year of bad gambling moments. That's neither here nor there, CC.
Right.
So, but now we have what is a really interesting matchup because you have the best defense in football against the best team of the last 20 years, the dynasty in the NFL. People are going to focus on the Brady and Bortles part of it. I'm really excited. We've talked about see the Pats offense match up with the Jags defense. Curious your thoughts on it.
I don't know. Really, this one to me, by all accounts, put it on paper, take it to a bar discussion, take it anywhere around, everybody's going to say Pats, 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 because they are this juggernaut of football power. Let's face it, they are. If they get into this, that's what Brady's going to play in his 8th Super Bowl. That's crazy.
Yes.
That's just insanity. So, you do have to acknowledge the dynasty and the powerhouse that the Pats have been. But the Jaguars didn't just walk into this. They didn't just accidentally show up to the AFC Championship. They're there for a reason. And look, as a football fan who doesn't have a dog in that fight, I just want a good game. And I think we're going to get one. I
know you didn't want to talk about the quarterbacks. I do. The law firm, obviously, of Keenum, Bortles, and Foles, they were zygotes, basically, when Tom Brady started playing football. We've been talking this whole season how long this guy has and what he could do. And is this it? Or can he, like he wants to play for another 45 years? What do you think about Tom Brady's longevity in this?
He apparently can do whatever he wants.
Easily, right?
Yeah. Every time I start to, because I was at the Super Bowl last year, and I saw that miracle happen, right? And I was like, if he doesn't walk out at 40 on top with the greatest game ever played, I think that would be silly.
Yeah.
But then he came back, and I was like, okay. And then I said, I think that was a mistake because clearly they probably won't even make the playoffs. Well, now he's playing the AFC Championship game, and he's got a pretty good shot at making the Super Bowl again. So what do I know? I clearly know nothing, and he can do whatever he wants.
Rob, Blake Bortles, you tell a bunch of jokes. Blake Bortles is the punchline of a lot of jokes in the National Football. Is this the game that he removes that title as the punchline of the NFL?
It could be, yeah. I mean, if he shows up and does everything
so you're crying about it.
I am. It's making me emotional. This could be Bortles' big moment.
Right. This is it.
That's my quarterback.
I've waited so long.
Is Rob still emotional like I am that somehow the Kansas City Chiefs want to
These are Chiefs tears.
I mean,
they haven't stopped. They haven't stopped.
Been suffering with this guy.
People don't know Rob's from the same place I am. He's from Kansas City. He grew up on the Kansas side of the state. I grew up on the Missouri side of the state. But regardless, did you believe in them this? Because I got fooled again.
Well, those first 5 games, I was pretty hard to live with and be around. Then, of course, I was brought back to earth. And then we got hot again, and I thought, this is great. We're peaking at the right time. Here we go.
And then the first half of the playoff game, it felt like that.
I don't know what it is. Arrowhead is such an advantage, but we haven't won a playoff game at Arrowhead since Montana was our quarterback.
Yeah, I know.
Yeah. He's really upset about it.
I mean, it's just So I just
they're killing me, man.
That's the real devastation of it all because you felt like they felt like the AFC there were some weak points this year.
I always. That's part of being a fan. That's fandom. I am always for the Chiefs. I'm always on board with the Chiefs. Their fate is my fate. I have to live with it. But yeah, they're killing me.
I try to be the resident funny person on this show. Otherwise, things get just a little serious. So I very much appreciate and love what you do every Sunday. Before we get back,
but what if she says next is not funny? Don't be concerned.
Okay, yeah.
It's not true. I'm not trying to be funny. When one doesn't try to be funny, one is funny or one is not funny.
Just a natural
talent.
You
thing.
and Rob share.
How much do you enjoy the stuff that you get to do on Sundays? We love watching you.
I thank you, and I appreciate that. I love to do it. It's a kind of a narrow lane.
Sure,
I got about a minute 45.
Maybe.
Sometimes.
Hey,
and sometimes if it's a one-game thing, like the Thanksgiving, I got 30 seconds.
Right.
And I got to make my picks, and I got to be G-rated. Not even PG, G-rated.
They're really hamstringing you there.
And it's the NFL, so I don't want to upset them.
Okay. Right.
Otherwise, Fox gets slapped, and then Fox slaps me.
Yep.
Right. So, it's a narrow lane with which to do comedy, and every week we got to come up with a sketch, So we try our best. Yeah.
Do you have one this year that you think back on that you're like, that's the favorite thing we've done?
Yeah, we do song parodies a lot.
Yeah.
And we did a Thanksgiving one that was kind of fun, I thought.
They did a song parody without you at the Upfronts this year that involved Terry and Howie rapping.
Yes.
I think that you would have been very, very much appreciated.
I think mercifully I was filming a movie.
I was just going to say, you're probably lucky and happy that you weren't there.